Imagine this. You've worked your whole life. You've earned every right to sit in that plush VIP lounge. The same lounge where travelers in designer suits casually sip their wine and glance at their Rolex watches. But then, out of nowhere, someone taps you on the shoulder. And before you can even finish your coffee, you're asked to leave. Not because your ticket was invalid. Not because you broke any rules. But because of who you are. This is the shocking true story of a black woman who was pulled from a VIP lounge in front of dozens of strangers. Humiliated, embarrassed, dismissed. But what happened next, nobody, and I mean nobody, saw coming. Because the very next day, the tables turned. And in a twist so powerful it left an entire industry whispering. She bought the airline's shares. Stick around, because in the next few minutes you're going to learn not just what happened in that lounge, but also how one woman's pain turned into power, how a single moment of humiliation can change the course of an entire company, and most importantly, what this story means to you. Her name is Maya Richardson, 42 years old, a successful entrepreneur, a woman who didn't just build her business. She built it from the ground up. Born and raised in Atlanta, Georgia, Maya was the kind of child who was always underestimated. Teachers told her she was too quiet. Bosses once told her she lacked presence. But Maya had something most people never saw coming. A determination carved out of every single no she'd ever heard. By her mid-30s, she had built a thriving tech consultancy that worked with Fortune 500 companies. Her face had been on magazine covers. She had spoken at conferences. She wasn't just wealthy. She was respected. And yet, on this one day, in this one airport lounge, none of that mattered. It was a Friday afternoon. Maya had just landed in New York, connecting on her way to London for a major business deal. The flight was long, the week had been exhausting, and she looked forward to the one luxury she allowed herself: peace in the VIP lounge. She walked in with her first-class boarding pass. She smiled at the hostess, placed her bag down, and grabbed a cappuccino. Nothing out of the ordinary, until two uniformed staff members approached. At first, Maya thought maybe it was a routine check, but the looks on their faces told a different story. "Ma'am, can we see your boarding pass again?" one asked. She handed it over, calm and polite. They examined it, whispered. Then one of them cleared his throat. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but you'll need to step outside the lounge." The entire room froze. A hush spread through the air. Maya blinked, confused. "Excuse me?" The officer shifted uncomfortably. "This lounge is for first class and platinum members only." Maya's voice stayed steady. "I am in first class. Here's my ticket." But it didn't matter. They didn't even look again. Instead, they gestured toward the door. And in that moment, Maya realized it wasn't about her ticket. It was about her. Maya felt the sting before the words even fully settled in her ears. She glanced around the lounge. A sea of faces staring at her, some with curiosity, others with pity, a few with judgment. A man in a tailored navy suit raised his eyebrows as if to say, "See? I knew she didn't belong here." Another woman clutched her designer tote just a little closer to her lap, pretending not to watch, but she was watching. Maya took a slow breath. "Would you like me to show you my ID? My confirmation email? My receipt?" she asked, her voice steady, though her chest burned. But the staff shook their heads. "No, ma'am. We just need you to step outside." And that was it. No explanation, no apology, no dignity, just dismissal. Maya picked up her bag. She walked toward the door, every step echoing louder than the last. And in those steps, she wasn't just leaving a lounge. She was walking out of a moment that would mark her forever. Now, let me pause here and ask you something. What would you have done? Would you have shouted? Made a scene? Demanded to see a manager? Or would you have done what Maya did? Walked out silently, head held high, but heart on fire? Because at that moment, Maya knew. She wasn't just fighting for a seat in a lounge. She was fighting against something much deeper, and that fight was only beginning. Maya sat by the gate, outside the comfort of the lounge, watching people stroll in and out like they owned the world. She wasn't crying. She wouldn't give them that satisfaction. But inside, she replayed the humiliation over and over again. She thought about her mother, a nurse who had worked double shifts just to put food on the table. She thought about her grandmother, a woman who had marched for civil rights, who had once been told she couldn't sit at a diner counter. And here she was, in 2023, living that same story in a different costume. A younger version of Maya might have written a strongly worded email. She might have posted angrily on Twitter, called out the airline by name, and demanded justice. But the Maya sitting there that day had changed. She didn't just want revenge. She wanted a transformation. The next morning, Maya woke up in her London hotel room, jet-lagged, exhausted, still angry, but also clear, because Maya wasn't just any passenger. She was a businesswoman. She understood markets. She understood ownership. And she knew something most people forget. Airlines don't run on lounges. They run on shares. So instead of drafting an angry tweet, Maya picked up her laptop. She logged into her brokerage account, and with a calmness that would shock even her, she began buying shares of the very airline that had humiliated her. Not a few shares, not symbolic ownership. She bought enough to get noticed, enough to make them see her name, enough to sit at the table they didn't even know she was walking toward. And here's where it gets interesting, because while most people would have left that incident behind as just another ugly memory, Maya saw it as leverage. She wasn't going to beg for a seat at their table. She was going to buy the table. The very next day, the airline's board received a notice. A new investor had bought a significant stake. Not enough to control the company, not yet, but enough to show up on their radar. Her name? Maya Richardson. When the news broke, journalists connected the dots. They found her. They found the story. They published it. Black entrepreneur pulled from airline's VIP lounge. Next day buys airline shares. It spread like wildfire. On social media, on TV, in boardrooms. And suddenly, the same airline that had asked her to leave a lounge was now forced to answer to her as a shareholder. Can you imagine the irony? One day, you're telling a woman she doesn't belong. The next day, she literally owns part of the company. Now, tell me in the comments, do you think this was petty revenge or poetic justice? Because depending on how you see it, this wasn't just a story about money. It was a story about power. But here's the part nobody likes to talk about. Owning shares doesn't mean you get to rewrite company policy overnight. It doesn't mean the humiliation magically disappears. And for Maya, the reality set in quickly. This wasn't a movie where one bold move fixes everything. In fact, some critics even accused her of grandstanding. Some said she was wasting her money. Others mocked her, claiming she only did it for attention. Even within the airline, whispers spread. She thinks buying shares will change how we run things? Good luck. And in a way, they were right, because this wasn't the satisfying Hollywood ending we all crave. This was real life, and real life is messy. But here's the thing. Maya never set out to destroy the airline. She didn't need to. What she did was shine a light. She forced an industry and the world to have a conversation about race, about dignity, about ownership, and whether or not the airline changed overnight. One thing was undeniable. Maya had shifted the balance. Because when you go from being told you don't belong in a lounge to owning a piece of the company that runs it, that's not just revenge. That's a lesson that says power isn't always given. Sometimes it's taken. So the next time someone tells you that you don't belong, remember Maya. Remember that maybe you're not supposed to beg for a seat at their table. Maybe you're meant to build your own. Now I want to hear from you. If you were in Maya's shoes, would you have done the same thing? Would you have walked out quietly or fought back in that moment? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story inspired you, don't forget to share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Because in the end, the lounge was never the prize. The real prize was ownership.